You're listening to The Stall and Stable Show, ideas for happy horsekeeping.
It's very easy to get caught up in this path. Like, I'm going to only do clicker training. I'm going to only do the latest fad or the Pirelli method or whatever it is. I'm going to follow this thing. But I think as you find your own voice, you're going to find your way to relate to the horses.
If you don't know who Tik Maynard is, I suggest you do a Google search for his book, In the Middle Are the Horsemen. While I could tell you what Tik does, where he does it, and then list his professional accomplishments, the best way for you to really get to know who he is to read his first book, In the Middle Are the Horsemen. It's about more than just his journey into professional horse sports. It's about every single one of us who's ever doubted ourselves, struggled, laughed, loved, and grown inside and outside of a barn. Then you'll know why he's a revered guest on the Stall and Stable Show. Tik's new adventure is complicated and exciting. That's the way he likes things. He's here today to talk with me about competing in this year's Road to the Horse colt starting contest, a somewhat unusual goal for an eventer, what he expects to get out of the experience, his competitive career, his horses, the role that liberty training and animal behavior has played in his world, and how all of it will fit into the pages of his next book. Listen in. This is episode 134 of the Stall and Stable Show, brought to you by American Stalls. Welcome back, listeners. Today's Wednesday, January 18th, 2024. I'm your host, Helena Harris. In addition to American Stalls, we are grateful for the ongoing support of Barn Pros, shipping their beautiful premium barn home kits nationwide. One of the best ways to understand how a company performs in the marketplace is to take a look at their Google reviews. I partnered with American Stalls because I believe in what the company does, but let me read you a quick Google review so you can get an idea of what other people think. A horse owner named Katrin wrote, "When I began looking for stall door upgrade options in the barn I just bought, I did hours of research and talked to many companies. I chose American Stalls because their customer service was second to none. Together we went over the options, I sent pictures, and was upfront with my budget. When the stall doors arrived, I was thrilled as they exceeded all of my expectations. My horses are happy and safe, and my stable looks amazing. Thank you, American Stalls. Great company, high quality." To learn more about what American Stalls offers, visit them online at americanstalls.com. I was going to read some really slick bio about Tik to introduce him to my listeners, and I kept recording what I was reading, and it sounded disingenuous and stupid to me. I mean, he's so accomplished, and he's really his experience and his knowledge is extensive. But there are a lot of people out there who have extensive knowledge and experience. So I figured I'll give you my version of who Tik is. He's a good dude. He grew up in Western Canada in Vancouver. He had a family who was involved in horse sports, very highly involved in horse sports, a well-rounded upbringing, and somehow learned to really not just love animals, but empathize with them and appreciate their existence in many different ways. He's also a naturally competitive person, and for a long time, he competed at the highest levels in modern pentathlon. His career shifted from pentathlon to horses full-time, and he met his wife, Sinead Halpin. They got married, and together they built Copperline Equestrian, which is based in Citra, Florida, just outside of Ocala. In the last 10 to 15 years, Tik and Sinead have built, I'm not going to say an empire, because they're not the type of people who like to rule anything. They like to learn, they like to grow, they like to work in harmony with their horses. They love to share what they know. They're fantastic and natural teachers, and they're not afraid to take risks and experiment for the betterment of themselves, their horses, and the sport of eventing. Tik is here today. He's been on my show several times. I was first introduced to him by our publishers at Horse and Rider Books. They said, "Have you read In the Middle Are the Horsemen?" I said, "No." They said, "You have to." They sent me a copy, and that was the beginning of a really cool friendship. So I'm very happy to welcome Tik back to my podcast today so we can talk about his next great adventure. Welcome back, old friend. It's nice to have you on the Stall and Stable Show again.
Thank you for having me. I'm pretty excited to be back on the show.
You are one busy man.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of work to get this organized here between the two of us to find a day.
But that's a good thing. You're the good kind of busy.
Yeah,
I
think so.
For the small business owner, especially the equestrian business owner, we have one of two problems. Either we're not busy enough or we're too busy.
That's true. Somebody asked me once what my definition of happiness was. And I said, I was overwhelmed. And I said, it's having the right number of projects, not too many and not too few.
Yeah, that's the holy grail. So we're going to talk today about where you are right now, what's going on in your life, and what that means to the horse community in general. You made a big announcement, or there was a big announcement not that long ago, that you have been accepted into a very prestigious competition, the Road to the Horse. But before we talk about that and the projects that you have going on, for our listeners who don't know you as well as I do, your first book, In the Middle Are the Horsemen, came out 5 years ago. And it was the word middle that really caught my attention. To me, it represents a very balanced view of horsemanship. And as I read through the book and read your stories and got a sense of your perspective, the word middle became even more anchored in my mind when it comes to your career. Does that word middle have the same meaning to you today as it did 5 years ago when you first wrote the book?
I think it more or less probably does. I think in that time, the pendulum has swung a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right as I've explored different things and I've been in different places and I've learned from different people. There's so many different lenses to look through when you look at horses and when you study horses. And it's very easy to get caught in your own path and not realize all these things are out there. And it became very obvious to me recently when I started looking at another animal, dogs, and I looked a little bit at dog training. And I found that same thing exists. You have some people that say, only use body language, don't use your voice. Only use your voice, don't use body language. Only use treats. Never use treats. Use a prong collar, use an e-collar, never use a collar. Take your dog to the park, never take your dog to the park. There's just so many, there's so many things. It's overwhelming. And, I don't know enough to say anything about dog training, but if I were to guess, I would say the answer would probably be the same for the lens that I look at it, that if I got into that world, that I would probably appreciate a middle ground. I think the important thing for me is that while I appreciate the middle ground, and I think the horsemen that I really admire in the middle ground, there's also some people that have swung that pendulum way one way or way the other way. And I still find it very easy and enjoyable to admire those people and learn from those people. People that never compete and are not trying to get results and they stay at home. And also people that are a lot firmer or tougher with horses than I am personally, but they're very good at something that they do and their skill and timing is good. And I find it enjoyable to learn from them as well. And really, I think one of the biggest mistakes you can make if you want to be a professional and you want to be the best you can be, whether you're a professional or not, but you're really trying to be a horseman, is I think at the beginning, you try to copy other people. I think that's inevitable. And when you're learning to write, it's the same thing. You try to copy writers you admire, like Hemingway or whoever. You're like, I want to write like this. And then later on, you find your voice. And I think it's the same with horses. I think, it's very easy to get caught up in this path. Like, I'm going to only do clicker training. I'm going to only do the latest fad or the Pirelli method or whatever it is. I'm going to follow this thing. But I think as you find your own voice, you're going to find your way to relate to the horses. For me, I do think I keep coming back to that middle ground.
But it is a little fluid, which is something that I've learned, right?
Yeah.
It's not a stayed point. And I think the older I get and the more my ego gets deflated every time I work with my horses, I realize that it's a fluid point and there is something to be learned and taken from everybody. And because training and horses and the relationship between the trainer and the horse are so individualized, right down to the time of day. You can take, my coach would say, ride the horse you're on. Well, I would take the same horse out of the barn 7 days a week, and I'd have 7 different horses sometimes.
Yes.
So there's a fluidity there, I think I've come to accept now about whose path I want to follow or what strategies I want to borrow from. I mean, it's useless to blaze a new trail here. You have to start with a template, So if someone else has done something that works, why not learn from it? Why not take from it a little bit? So I can totally see your perspective on that now. You have been competing quite a bit.
Yeah.
And you have your horse, Sam, seems to be moving up the levels and you're having a good time doing that. Tell us about your competitive life right now.
Yeah. Sam is, we've had him in our program for about 2 years. He's eventing. For those of you that don't follow eventing on the show, we've got dressage, show jumping, and cross country. And at the highest levels, they're jumping about 4'3", and in the dressage, there's counter canter and flying changes and half pass and shoulder in. You never get the tempi changes in eventing that you do in straight dressage. And then the cross country at the very highest levels, you've got a 4-star and a 5-star, which means you're galloping for over 10 minutes over varied terrain and over solid obstacles that are 4.5 feet high. And Sam, just this few weeks ago, has just finished both of our first 4-star long. And really the only thing more difficult than that is the 5-star, which there's only a few of those in the world. There's now 2 in the United States, 1 in Maryland and 1 in Kentucky. And I don't think we're quite ready for that. We'll probably do another season or 2 at the 4-star level. But it's the most exciting cross-country horse that I've ever had in my life. So I'm pretty excited about having him.
Did you know when you first got him that he had the potential to take the 2 of you to where you're going?
No. And I really don't think I'm a good enough judge of a young horse to be able to see that potential. And I would even think that some people that think they can see that potential are probably deluding themselves a little bit. I think it's pretty difficult to look at a young horse and say, this horse has 5-star potential, because there's so many things that go into it. I think you could say what horses probably couldn't do it, but to say what horses can do it, I don't know if you can really say that till you actually get to that level.
Yeah. Is Sam the same athletic partner at home when you're schooling and you're working on stuff that he is when you're actually competing? Meaning, do you know the horse you're on when you're out there and you're doing your first 4-star long?
Yeah, Sam and I know each other very, very well at this point. And one of the things that I think about when I'm training, especially if I've got a horse that's that can be emotional, or they can get their adrenaline up, or they can be spooky, or they can be anxious, is that I want to be able to know what the reaction is going to be almost before it happens. Like if I'm walking down the trail and I see that a tree has fallen over, like I want to be able to predict, my horse is going to stop and his heart rate's going to come up and he's going to want to go 2 feet to the left. And even more important than that, I want him to be able to predict what my reaction is going to be when he does that. I want him to know that he's kind of like, he's not thinking ahead of that, but he's going, as I go to slow down, I can sort of trust my person that he's going to allow me to do that, and he's going to allow me to look. You can feel a lot of brace in a horse that doesn't know their person, because they don't know what to expect. So I think being able to predict what your horse is going to do is important, but having you be predictable, that they can. Am I making sense here?
Yes, you are.
They know what you're going to do. I think that's even more important, and I think that's how you get to know each other.
That speaks to the relationship that you have with the animal and your context with each other. His with you and you with him is more complete. So you do know what he's going to do, or he does know that when an emotional situation comes up, he can count on you, or he's not expecting, because he's had positive associations with those experiences.
Yes.
How has your evolution as a horseman impacted your growth as a competitor, especially in the last couple of years? And what would you say is the key indicator in your relationship with Sam?
Overall, not to do with Sam, probably the biggest change that's happened in my life is I'm feeling, as I get older, less and less urge or need to compete, which I think is just an interesting thing to observe about myself. And I would be curious if other people have that same feeling as they get older. I know some people that have become mothers have said that after they've had kids, they don't feel that urge anymore. So I think that's an interesting thing to know. And I think where that shows up with Sam is I would way rather do something well than just move up a level. And I think in eventing, that's very important. I think a lot of people move up before they're ready for the sake of saying they want to jump higher or go faster, do a 2-star or 3-star or 4-star or 5-star. And, in a lot of sports, moving up isn't a big deal. You just don't win if you move up. Whereas in the sport of eventing, if you move up before you're ready, you or your horse can get seriously hurt, which obviously is not good for yourself or your horse or the sport. So I think it's very important to kind of take into account, like, what kind of competition do you want to have? And I think if we really are honest with ourselves, you can leave a competition where you won and feel badly about it because of how it went or the relationship with your horse got worse. You can also leave a competition, or at least I can, where I didn't win or even, come in the ribbons, and I can feel really good about it. I can feel like my relationship with the horse got better and we're setting ourselves up for the future, and I made the right decisions on the day. That comes back to the middle that we talked about, is the middle ground between wanting to do well and the horsemanship side of stuff, having a happy horse.
The sense of accomplishment changes. I would say you're right. When becoming a mother, it comes down to a sense of purpose, I think. A lot of us are like, well, what's my purpose in life? And once you hit that sweet spot of what your purpose is, it feels really good. And so you find yourself, or at least I do, I find myself chasing something, some kind of external value, less. And more that soft sense of accomplishment. Right. That's the only words I can use to describe it. It's a soft sense of accomplishment that's very satisfying.
Yeah. You're appreciating getting better. You're appreciating learning. You're appreciating how the relationship with you and your horse is getting better. And you're appreciating just that they're learning. And if you happen to win, that's great. But there's so much appreciation about everything on the way.
And that doesn't mean I don't want to test what we've done. It's right. So to me, the competition is a test of, it's just good to keep yourself in check. Are we going in the right direction? How good? It's proving your point.
I think the test for me is important. I think if I don't have that test, and I've seen this with people that are very good but haven't competed in a long time, is you feel like things are going great. Like if I take 5 circles, I can do a perfect trot canter transition. I just need 4 or 5 circles to set it up. And when the feeling's just right, it's like, whoop, here we go. But in a dressage test, when you got to do something at this letter and then something at this letter and then something at this letter, and you don't have 4 or 5 circles to set up that perfect transition, all of a sudden it's a whole different test of where you're at. It's a little bit of honest feedback. And then you go, hey, like, I'm not quite where I thought I was at home, and I got to go home and work on that. Yeah.
And there's, the 2 variables are you and your horse. So there's, what is your horse capable of mentally, emotionally, and then education-wise, what does he know how to do, training-wise? Mm-hmm. And then you, the rider, what are the variables within you? You obviously, as an upper-level competitor, you're technically capable, but there's a lot of mental and emotional part as well. And once you introduce things like time pressure or precision, that's sort of like the third, what is the mystery variable going to be when my horse and I show up at a big event? Is that something that tests you as a competitor, that sort of hidden variable? Or do you know what the variable is going to be? Do you know what your challenge is going to be on any given event?
Yeah, I think you do have outside variables. You've got the cross-country course, you've got the judges of that particular day, you've got, are you going to show up with a lot of atmosphere and the horse is going to be spooky? I think for where I'm at now with Sam, I think most of that stuff, it's pretty rare that something catches me off guard. It's not to say that he's totally prepared for everything, but I feel like most of that stuff I can and should be preparing for at home. Doing a short jumping course where you're not allowed to circle, you've got to jump 12 jumps in a row. Doing a dressage test where you've got to do it the first time, you can't do it. Like, those are things you can do to see where you're at. And I don't think I would be surprised by something. He's a horse that can get a little spooky and can get a little bit of adrenaline going before cross country. So again, that's something that I am and I can and I should be working on that with him at home. Like, I should be taking him off the property still. I should be taking him to things he's a little bit worried about and introducing them gradually and letting him know that things are going to be okay and they're going to end well. And yeah, I think it would be a little bit of a surprise to me if there was something where I was like, whoa, that came out of nowhere.
Let's talk now about Road to the Horse, because that's, I don't want to say it's a departure from what you do, because from what I know of you and your work, you're really taking the art and the science of animal behavior and training and putting them together and seeing what you can make.
Yeah.
So training can start at any point in the animal's life. It can start at birth with imprinting. Road to the Horse is about starting colts. What is it about Road to the Horse that attracted you? And what do you hope to get out of that whole experience?
I guess what first attracted me about Road to the Horse over 10 years ago was that it celebrated and shone a spotlight on what is generally in the horse world thought of as like a trade. You know, it's starting horses for people. It's almost like a carpenter or a plumber or somebody that comes and digs your ditch. Like all the magazines, all the Grand Prix, all the prize money, that's on the top level of the sport. Grand Prix show jumping, Grand Prix dressage, 5-star reining, cutting. You know, you look at the top, like how often do we go, who are the best in the world at starting horses? You know, these are people that are usually get hurt more, they get paid less. And yet the people that are really good at it are as much artists in their own right as a Grand Prix dressage rider. The people that are starting horses that are artists, like you can watch them start a horse and you get goosebumps as much as like watching a Grand Prix, like to music where everybody's clapping along and you're like, this is so harmonious. Watching somebody start a horse, you can get that same feeling when it's done well. And what Road to the Horse does is it shines that spotlight on it. And it basically says, we're going to do it. We're going to start a horse in 3 days. And they're asking the question, like, is this possible? If we chose the right horse and we had one of the 3 best in the world do this, how well could it be done? The trick, like the reason why I think you could worry about it or why it could be controversial is because what happens if you get a horse that isn't ready for the challenge? What happens if you get a person that isn't ready for the challenge? What if you get somebody feeling the pressure of the competition and they push too hard? And that is a very legitimate concern. Imagine climbing Mount Everest. That is one of the pinnacles of like climbing achievement. And yet every year, people that would normally make the right decision about when to turn back when the weather changes, they keep climbing and people die. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody dies on Everest every year because they get short on oxygen. They have this need to accomplish something they've been training for the past 3 years. And they feel like they have to do it. And this is one shot. And all of a sudden a storm is rolling in. And then they keep going. And Road to the Horse, I think, and possibly like in a situation like that, it's really a test of, you know, you take people that have the skill and it's a test of their character. When there's prize money on the line, there's judges watching, there's people watching, can they make the right decision about how hard to push? And it's very there's a lot of focus on it in this particular situation, but it's really the same question all horse people need to ask themselves all the time in any competition. Am I pushing too hard?
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, you can also make the other mistake, which is push the wrong way or not push hard enough. Another example would be like, in terms of how hard to push, it'd be like with, you know, we have 2 kids, a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and knowing how strict to be or how much discipline or how many boundaries to create is very difficult. Like I have no answers to that. Like it'd be very easy to be too strict. And I think it'd be very easy to not be strict enough, you know, like it's just super, super difficult. I find it comes much more naturally to do that with horses than with dogs or kids. But I think it's an interesting question to think about.
Yeah. Kids, even though it's not quite developed, they still have that frontal lobe. So there's some logic they can rationalize, which is helpful when you're trying to teach them to stay out of traffic and not, you know, put their hand on the stove. But it's also challenging when they are when they're pushing their boundaries or testing their fences. You know,
yeah.
They come up against a boundary that you put there as a parent, and the first thing that they're going to do is try to figure out a way around it. And that's a good thing. That's how we want our kids' minds to work. We want them to grow up to be problem solvers. But it's a balance. And that's that. Here's where we come back to that fluid middle point. You have 2 kids. They may have a lot of things in common, but they may also be very, very different. So what works for one isn't going to work for another.
Yeah.
And it might work for you, but it's not going to work for your wife, right? But it's really, really hard, I think, in our industry to stay so open for any number of reasons. I guess it depends on what the end goal is, but to stay open and fluid. But when you're a professional, like someone in your position, I think that's what's contributed to your success, is that you have remained open.
I agree with you that it's difficult. And I think anybody that is not open, I definitely would not judge them, because it's very difficult. And I think probably the single biggest thing that makes it difficult is probably social media. You know, like you just see people doing something one way and you see people criticizing doing it another way. And it's just, it either makes you want to be defensive, or it makes you want to fight, or it makes you want to argue your point when nobody's listening. You know, there's a lot of great things about social media, but there's a lot of stuff that instead of uniting the horse world, it sort of can polarize the horse world. And you see that in different training techniques. You see that with people that are quoting different scientific studies, some of them which are just like, it might just be a meme that is actually not a scientific study at all. Like somebody just made a meme and said, science said this. And it's like, you actually, maybe science did say that. Somebody wrote a meme. Like there's no fact checking. There's no peer reviewing. Like it's just all like thrown up onto this like scroll where you just go like this with your finger. And
I can't even do it anymore. I can't even do it. It's just so much junk.
Yeah, it's so much junk.
And people will interpret, even if it is a scientific study, they will interpret the results however it best fits their own narrative. You know, they go, oh, science said this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, well, you know, the sample size was 4 horses. So let's wait until we get some more science to support that.
Exactly. And there's also like the other thing that social media has given both to professionals and to armchair critics is it gives the ability to very much just give something without context or without nuance. And you have very little idea of, like, you can read somebody and they say all the best words in the world, but you really have very little idea of how they actually are with horses and how their horses are, unless you go spend a weekend or a week or more and you attend a clinic, or you watch them at their barn, or you take a lesson for them, or you watch them not just in the class at the show, but you watch how they warm up and how they ride their young horses. There's a lot of people that can write a beautiful paragraph and put a 10-second clip up and say something is great or something is horrible. And it's like, there's so much context missing.
I had my ass handed to me the other day. I thought, we arrived at South Carolina. My horses are settling. They're great. I took 2 of them out, got in the saddle. Everybody's well behaved. And then I encountered something I wasn't expected with Susie. And I was so out of my league in that moment. I didn't do as bad as I thought I could. I managed the situation. I was glad I had my helmet and my vest on. You know, I ended up walking calmly with my horse back to the paddock. And we've been so busy here in Aiken setting things up. I haven't had a lot of time to mindlessly scroll myself to sleep, right? Yeah. And what I found is, this is where that phrase, that soft sense of accomplishment, first came into my mind. Rather than comparing myself or looking at a 10-second clip or reading someone's paragraph, some professional horseman or woman, and saying, this is where I should be right now, or this is what I should do. And like you said, you can scroll down and someone can tell you that you need to do the exact opposite, and it very quickly becomes overwhelming. So not only is the amount of information that we're consuming through social media overwhelming, when you're actually in that moment, it's real life, you think, because you've read all this stuff and you've studied all this stuff and you watch the videos, you're like, oh, I know what I'm doing. And then reality is like, wait a minute, sister, sit down, because this thoroughbred is going to show you what you don't know. Yeah. And I like that. That, to me, is as distressing as it was, it's personal growth. It's the nuances. What did I miss here? How can I do better? Your voice is in my head all the time. What does my horse need from me right now? Introducing my horses to a completely new environment is my version of a 4-star long. That's my big test.
Yeah.
And it shows you, it illuminates your weaknesses. And to me, that's invigorating. Oh, great. I got something to work on. How can I do better? And then when you do work on this stuff and things do get better, even in tiny doses, you get that sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
So you got so much going on. You've got your competitive life, you've got your family, you've got your business, you have Road to the Horse. You also have writing, which is kind of in your soul. Tell me about the marriage between your life as a horseman and your craft as a writer.
At this point, I'm really only writing about the whole journey, both exterior journey and interior journey that go along with learning about horses. And there's a very big journey that happens inside of you when you're learning about horses. I mean, any time that you feel anxious, fear, frustration, overwhelmed, anger, any of those things that you feel around horses, that is a chance to reflect on it and grow. And those are also things that you can write about. Because as much as people want to hear about horses, I think what is actually more relatable is how we feel about horses and how we feel about ourselves, about how we feel about horses. And I try in the middle of the Horseman, I tried to get that across a little bit, and I'm hoping I will be able to find the words to do that a little bit more in this book that I'm working on now. And both horses, I think how I've started to think about horses has helped my writing, and the writing it down has helped me be a better person with my horses, a better person to my horses, a better person for my horses. It's made me more observant of what's going on. And a great example of somebody that's observant is you look at somebody like Jane Goodall. Like, did she ever try to train a chimpanzee? Like, she wasn't trying to train them. She was there in the jungle, just watching them, and same thing with people that want to train marine mammals. Usually they're not going in and saying, oh, I get to train a marine mammal in the first 2 years. They go there and they learn about them and they're watching them. And I think in the horse world, that doesn't happen enough. Some people do it. They have a natural inclination to observe and to watch and to study. But I think a lot of people just like to do. They want to get on. They want to jump. Like, with kids, that's, they don't want to go there and watch other people ride. They want to get on. And I think the doing is important. But I also think, actually, it probably depends a little bit how you learn. But for me, I learn more from watching than from doing. Like, if I go take a lesson from somebody that I respect, I would often rather watch them ride my horse than have them talk me through what to do. Because totally. I watch what they do and I watch the result that they get and I watch how they do it. And I just go home and it sits in my brain for a sec, or sometimes more than a sec, sometimes months or years. And then you're like, oh, that makes sense. Like, even now I can think back like 5 years ago to like a lesson that I might've had. And I go like, oh my God, like that's what he's trying to do. That's what I got to do now. And then the other thing that Sinead's challenged me to do, that the writing also challenges me to do, is just because you can do something off of feel, can you also explain what is happening, explain what you did, and break it down? And I find that kind of a fun challenge to say, okay, like if you think about getting on your horse, instead of just saying, get on your horse, could you break that down into 5 steps or 10 steps? And how would you explain it in a way to somebody getting on their horse in a really smooth, empathetic, efficient, thoughtful way? The other thing about horses and about writing is I really get excited about both of them. And there's some things that happen with horses that I want, and I don't know if it's possible, but my goal would be able to share my excitement about them. Not necessarily like the detail, like I'm not expecting everybody else to go out and maybe get interested in the technical side of what I'm doing, but just the excitement about this thing, like how Road to the Horse made me excited about the art of starting a horse. There's a book by Walter Tevis called The Queen's Gambit that they made into a TV show. You don't have to know anything about the technicality of chess to like, you start getting excited about chess and like how they think about chess and how these chess competitions come around and the pressure and stuff like that. Or when I was in high school, my favorite book, and still one of my favorite books, is called The Power of One by Bryce Courtney. And I had zero interest in boxing before I read that book. And afterwards, I wanted to become a boxer. Like I never became a boxer, obviously, but like you get excited about something that you don't know about. And certain writers can do that. Sinead and I just watched the documentary called Naiad, which if you haven't seen that, I recommend it. It's about the lady on her 5th attempt. She swims from Cuba to Key West, 103 miles, and it takes her over 60 hours, which is like, they're like going through the night 3 times. And
she's not young.
Yeah, she's 62 when she finally does it. Her first attempt was when she was 30, and then she had, between 60 and 62, she had 4 more goes at it. And I'd never thought about long distance swimming. And then you're watching this and you're just like, this is like so incredible. Like, and you think about what goes into it and the amount of prep work that has to happen and the nutrition and the food and the, keeping the sharks away and stuff like that. And you get excited about that. And I would love some of the stuff that I think about with horses. I would just love to share that with people.
When you love something so much, you feel like, I just can't contain it. It's just my little body and brain isn't big enough to hold all of this joy and this passion and this curiosity, this life. It's like, it's just life nurturing. And I mean, this is why I talk about horses. This is my career is talking about horses because everything they do is exciting. Even when I'm bloody and broken, it's exciting. There's something to learn from it. Yep. It's inspiring. Yeah. So that marriage between what you're experiencing, what you're living, and it's a double dipping for you because not only do you get to learn more from the experience because you're writing it down, right? You're digesting it and processing it a second time.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So it's good for you, but then it's good for your readers because they get to experience not just what you've done, but what you have to say about it after you've processed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
After you've actually learned from it, which is incredibly valuable. And storytelling, we say this in podcasting, storytelling is a very valuable, palatable way to connect, to inspire, to share. You have 2 books in the works. One is about your experience with Road to the Horse, and the other is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Horsemanship. Give us a quick overview of both of those books and what we can look for when those are ready.
So the book I'm working on right now is going to be about starting horses. And it's going to be hopefully sharing some of what makes it more than just a trade, some of what makes it an art, sharing that with the readers. And then a part of it will be about getting ready for Road to the Horse and the competition itself. As I prepare for Road to the Horse, I'm trying to put myself in a lot of situations that are a little bit out of my comfort zone, going places or meeting people or doing things that aren't necessarily the way that I would do them, but trying to really put myself in that uncomfortable position where I'm not the expert and I'm learning something entirely new about how somebody else maybe starts horses or what their techniques are. And I'm going to do that basically up until the end of February. And then from pretty much March 1st until the competition at the end of March, I'm going to go back to, for the last month, sort of like the equivalent of tapering. I'm going to go back to what I do, what I know how to do. I'm going to incorporate some of those techniques. I'm going to really try to build up my confidence around the way that I do things. And then the second book, the working title for it is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Horsemanship, will hopefully be a similar thing in which I'll be learning from other people that do liberty training. And again, I'm going to write about what makes that partly a trade, but also partly an art and different ways that people do it. I think if you're not aware of the liberty world, there's so many, it's actually incredible. So many different ways to train a liberty horse and so many different sort of philosophies or principles people might have, and it comes from all different backgrounds. It comes from the Western horsemanship background. It comes from the circus background. It comes from the training for movies background. It comes from Europe. It comes from, California. It comes from clicker training. It comes from, it just comes from all these different places. And some people have very much their own style, and some people are starting to incorporate different styles. And I think this period we're at right now, if you were to think of liberty training as like a discipline or a sport, I couldn't imagine a more exciting time to be learning about it. And Dan James recently started the International Liberty Horse Association. So there's already an association, there's documentaries about it. There's Cavalia, there's different circuses. And I just want to learn about these things and kind of the same as the first book, share some of my excitement with everybody. Let them know what's going on behind the scenes.
Well, I'll tell you, it's a lot of fun. And what better way to work with a horse when they have, to me, it's not, there are many different ways that we can cheat to get a horse to cooperate. But I think that liberty is probably the closest to being as truly a cooperative relationship as possible. I can feel the artistry in there. And I hope to pursue that a little bit. We've got a 6-acre pasture, and I went out there and did some liberty stuff with Clarabelle, my youngest thoroughbred, and had a great time. She loved it. She just absolutely loved it. She was so game. And it felt good to me because there's no halter. I didn't even have treats or, food reward. We were just kind of playing. And the connection that you feel, again, is that soft sense of accomplishment. Like, oh, we've got 6 acres and this horse wants to hang out with me and do stuff.
That's amazing.
Right?
I love that.
So and listeners, I'll post links to the association that Tik just mentioned. Last but not least, where can our listeners find more about what you're doing, especially Road to the Horse? I know a lot of our listeners would like to support what you're doing, and it's challenging, especially with all the balls that you have in the air. Tell us where they can find out more about you and what you've got coming up.
We've got a website, Copperline Equestrian. We've got a few different Facebook pages for myself, Tik Maynard, my wife, Sinead. And then we've got a Copperline Facebook page. Road to the Horse is March 21st to 24th, and it's at the Kentucky Horse Park. I think the VIP tickets are all sold out, but there's still a few hundred regular tickets, and they also live stream that. So that's going to be a pretty fun event.
I hope to get there. I hope. Fingers crossed.
It'd be great to have you there.
Fingers crossed. I might be in the nosebleed seats, but that's okay. You'll hear me. All right. Tik Maynard, thank you so much for sharing your time, which I know is incredibly valuable. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Listeners, if you haven't read the book, In the Middle Are the Horsemen, I encourage you to do so. You can get it in print at horseandriderbooks.com, and it's also available in audiobook format, narrated by Tik himself. It's a treat, actually, to listen. If you don't have the time to sit down with a paper copy, I highly recommend the audio version. For more information about what we talked about, go to stallandstable.com, look up episode 134 show notes, and you'll find links to everything Tik Maynard, as well as information about Road to the Horse. If you're an equestrian professional of any kind and you need help with your business, please reach out to me, or go to stallandstable.com and take a look at our professional services. Analyzing your business, whether you're just getting started or you've already been up and running, is my area of expertise. I can help you figure out where things are strong, where things are weak, and help you get back on track so that your life in the barn is a little more balanced and you get the joy out of your job that you had always envisioned. And if you're not the type of person who wants to talk, there are self-help options at stallandstable.com, downloadable guides that walk you through the finances of your business, how much to charge for your services, how much to charge for board, how much you want to make, can you afford to hire a barn manager? There are a lot of self-help guides up there, so please take a look. And if you have any questions or you need more help, feel free to reach out to me. Many thanks once again to our sponsors, American Stalls. If you're looking for premium quality stall components and barn accessories, they're the company to go to. You can find them online at americanstalls.com. And Barn Pros, shipping their barn home kits nationwide. And these are good kits. This is not junk, people. These are nice homes. These are places that you and your horses will feel very comfortable in for a long time to come. You can find them at barnpros.com. And if you can't remember all of that, just go to stallandstable.com/support. And that's going to be a wrap for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it.